Nisbet is the Director of Call Scotland, the National Schools Assistive Technology Service of Scotland. He has worked with assistive technology since 1983 and brings a technical and engineering perspective to Call's contribution to Scottish education. He works directly with learners in schools, providing assistive technology assessment and support, and has led a number of innovative national developments. These include the development of SQA digital examination papers for candidates with disabilities, licensing of high-quality Scottish computer voice so that young people can read digital resources with support from text-to-speech, and Books for All programme and database, which is helping schools and pupils make use of learning resources in an accessible alternative format. Paul is one of the inventors of an award-winning smart wheelchair, a powered wheelchair for children with severe disabilities, and in 2011 he was awarded the University of Edinburgh's Principal's Medal in recognition for his work. So we are very pleased to have him with us and that he's going to be our last speaker for today.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm honoured to be here, coming from one Celtic fringe environment to a second one. Now then. As discussed, I come from Call Scotland, and we are funded mainly by the Scottish Government. We provide leadership in the field of assistive technology in education, and we have a number of free core assistive technologies. We work directly with schools and learners, and we have information sites, and we have training opportunities, and we also have an assistive technology loan bank where staff can borrow materials, and we undertake a number of projects. Scotland, of course, is a land of whisky, as is Ireland. Scotland is also a land of golf. And these things, I'll give you this free advice, are best enjoyed in isolation. Because occasionally if you mix them together, you might find yourself doing something which was a good idea at the time, but turns out to be less so. We have a vision in Call, and our vision is that every young person in Scotland with an additional support need would have the curriculum materials and the technology and the support in order to use these materials effectively. In Scotland, we have a curriculum called, somewhat immodestly, the Curriculum for Excellence, and it aspires to develop children who are successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. So when Curriculum for Excellence was first devised, we asked ourselves, for the learners that we work with, how can you be a successful learner if you've got difficulty accessing books and learning materials? How can you be a confident individual if you're reliant on others to read to you, write for you, or speak for you? How can you be a responsible citizen if you have difficulty accessing information? And how can you be an effective contributor if you have difficulty reading, writing, or communicating? And of course, we might be suggesting that assistive technology can provide affirmative answers to these questions. However, it's easier said than done, is it not? So I've been asked to talk about practical applications in the classroom. And the thing about assistive technology is there's an awful lot of it around these days. There are laptops, iPads, Chromebooks, text-to-speech, reading pens, mind mapping tools, there's products to help you with literacy, there's visual supports, there's communication aids, there's speech recognition, and so I don't think in the space that we've got here this afternoon, I'm going to cover all them. So I'm simply proposing not to. Instead, I'm going to try and give some insights on the way we think about assistive technology. So in preparation for this, I had a good look around the Department for Education website in Ireland, and I see that our goals are to improve the learning experience and success of learners, the progress of learners at risk of educational disadvantage or learners with special educational needs, help those delivering education services, and build stronger bridges between education and other services, and improve national planning. So I have some things to say about all of those, I hope. In Scotland, we have a similar vision. We're looking at improving attainment for every child and we're also looking at improving attainment, particularly for learners who have got some kind of difficulty, and closing the attainment gap. Now, let's have a look at some evidence for this. This is a table, and it's of data, experimental data, I'll give you, published by a Scottish Government last January. This is primary 7 learners, so that's the last year of primary school before we go to secondary school. And we're looking at levels of attainment as reported by teachers with children without additional support needs and with additional support needs. And what we see is concerning, I think, to say the least. 82% of learners without additional support needs are achieving the expected level in reading, compared with 45% of those who have additional support needs. Now, to some extent, we say, well, really, are we surprised? Because by definition, learners who require additional support are probably not attaining as well as we would like them to. So there's no surprise here. But given that additional support needs constitute 1 in 4 of all learners, that's an awful lot of learners who are about to hit secondary school who can't read well enough. So this is a situation which is not going to set us up to have successful learners or confident individuals. And so we need to do something about this. So where does assistive technology fit? Well, I've been using a few observations from Professor Andy Hargreaves, and I've been using them because he's on the Scottish Government International Panel of Advisors advising Scottish Government on what we need to do in order to improve attainment in Scotland. So it's a handy thing to have. So the use of assistive technology has become a small revolution in student achievement, so that many students are able to access, develop, and display what they know in ways that have never been possible for them before. Assistive technologies can increase participation, enhance inclusion, develop a positive identity and self-confidence, and raise achievement in the community of students with special educational needs. How does this happen? Well, they are most successfully used when they are placed in the service of the primary learning goals, and we'll come back to this. And their greatest impact has been where they're integrated into classroom practice, rather than providing a form of separate and sometimes stigmatized support. And I think this is really important. Assistive technology is not simply a device, it's not simply a shiny laptop, it's an interconnected system, including planning, professional development, and support. So when we look at assistive technology in schools, we're talking about the device, certainly, but we're also talking about accessibility software and hardware, and support, and accessible learning resources. So a good way, I think, for thinking about how AT and technology in general fits into school life is universal design for learning, a set of principles that's going to give all learners in the school equal opportunities. Now, I'm sure that you've come across UDL before, but we're talking about multiple means of representation. So in the case of learners who've got some difficulty with your standard textbook, for example, it simply means that we want to get that textbook available in other formats. So that's relatively straightforward. Multiple means of representation could be taking your digital resource here and increasing the font size, changing the background color, using text-to-speech, or changing the font line and facing, as well as using all the audio methods. So here's an example of text-to-speech in action.
Hello, I am Stuart, the new Scottish male voice. I was created by Cereproc, an Edinburgh-based organisation specialising in advanced speech synthesis research with funding support from the Scottish Government. I can help you in several different ways. If you're dyslexic or have reading difficulties, you can use me to read out documents, web pages, textbooks, and even exam papers on your computer. If you're blind or have difficulty seeing text, you can use me to read digital curriculum, resources, and talking books. If you are a writer, you can use me to proofread your latest prose. If you have difficulty speaking, you can use me on your voice output communication aid to talk to other people. You can
So a computer text reader is one of the most basic assistive technologies around. But it's not just for learners who might have a difficulty with reading. Text-to-speech can be used by a very wide range of individuals, including those who just simply want to proofread back, like myself, what we've already written. So that's multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression. So the standard method in most schools is still to use handwritten response, but equally nowadays with technology we have typed responses, or indeed verbal responses, or the use of AAC, the use of symbols, or the use of art, drawing, images, multimedia and video. In terms of literacy support, we have a wide range of different technologies available: word banks, word prediction, speech recognition, and a variety of tools offered by programs like Read and Write Gold and Clicker. Multiple means of engagement, well, that could mean recognizing that some learners respond to routine, others prefer variation. Some learners prefer to have a choice of activity. Some learners prefer more direction. Some learners work best as individuals. Some learners work best as groups. So recognizing that fact and planning accordingly can be helpful. So the thing I like about UDL is it's by design. Differentiation I have a problem with, because differentiation says, you're different, I'm going to take what I already do and I'm going to make it different. And that means you're going to be doubly different. UDL expects people to be working in different ways by design. And so we design our curriculum and our methods of engagement to recognize that fact. And I think that's helpful. So I want to give a few examples here of some learners. Our first learner is Hamish, and he's in primary 6. So he is 11 years old, and this is an article that he wrote in a magazine for Dyslexia Scotland a couple of years ago. So Hamish is 11 years old, and he started using an iPad in primary, first of all to help him with his homework at home. And he found it so helpful that he started taking it into school. Now, Hamish has got real significant difficulties with reading and with text. So he uses voice-activated technology. When he's trying to find something on the internet, he dictates to Siri, and he uses that to help him find the information he wants. When he's found it, he uses the screen reader to have the information read out to him. If he finds something that he particularly likes, he can screenshot it and save it to his digital jotter. And because he's got difficulty with text, both reading and writing, he makes a lot of use of voice. So he records voice notes and he sends them to his teacher. He says, I don't have to write anything. My teacher puts all my homework on Edmodo, so that's a cloud system for transferring work back to and from him. So he can listen to it on his iPad. If it's a worksheet, he opens it in an app and he either dictates his answers or he records his answers into the worksheet and then sends it back to his teacher. When he plans to go to high school, he's going to use the iPad to video and to use the reminders instead of having to take notes about homework. He says he would recommend an iPad to everyone. Now, when I read this, I thought, this is brilliant. It sums up what we're trying to achieve, if only it was that simple. Because I'm sure you will know similar Hamishes where it just doesn't seem to happen. And I've tried to work with people like Hamish, and it just doesn't happen that easily. But let's look again at what he's using. So he's reading a website. On the left-hand side, we have a screenshot from the iPad with a simplified display of what he's reading, and he can use the built-in text-to-speech to have that information read out to him. On the right-hand side here, we have a worksheet, and it's a PDF file. He's opened it on the iPad. He can either type his answers in, or he can dictate his answers in with Siri, or he can record his answers in, and then he sends it off to the teacher. Now, one of the things that Dave mentioned was the fact that things are now mainstream as opposed to being specialized. And most of the things that Hamish is using are just built in as part of the iPad. So the iPad has got extremely good built-in accessibility. And what once was specialized is now mainstream and also cheap. So in 2000, assistive technology typically was heavy, slow, had rubbish battery life, and it was expensive. So it was rationed to people who were deemed to, be most deserving. But nowadays, everyone's got the stuff. And in Hamish's case, I don't think the identification of the iPad as a suitable support for him came from the professionals like me or the teacher. It came from his mum and Hamish. And that's changed the game. So a question to you and to me is, well, how can we help support our learners in a situation where they've all got mobile phones and they're not relying on the education system to identify what they require and provide it to them? How does that change the balance of power? And in your situation, the Hamishes that are out there, how are we going to help them get their hands on and learn how to use this assistive technology? And just want to make the point that it's not iPad time. Hamish could equally be doing the same sort of things on a Windows machine. So it's not the case that it's to do with the technology itself, because you can do most of the things that Hamish was doing with a Windows device. Now, one of the keys to how Hamish was being successful was the learning resources themselves. As we said, there's no point in just giving somebody a device. What are you going to do with it? It's just shiny kit. So you need digital learning resources to go along with this technology. So here we've got a website, and some learners will be accessing websites, but we've also got a textbook, and we've got some material from a teacher. So if we're going to make a success of assistive technology, these resources have got to get from the teacher and the publisher onto the digital device. And this is absolutely crucial. So where can we get our learning resources? Well, you may be fortunate if you're reading a novel, you can go to the Kindle web store, or you can go to iTunes and you can just buy it. So that's fine. But I think you'll find relatively few school textbooks are available on iTunes. So in the United Kingdom, we have an extremely good service called RNIB Bookshare. There's another free charitable service, the National Accessible Library. And in Scotland, we have a Books for All Scotland database, which has got accessible resources. I notice in Ireland, we have Child Vision, I think it is. And Child Vision transcribes and produces materials in large print, DAISY, and Braille for learners who've got visual impairment. And so, a question to you, what about Hamish, or whatever he's called in Ireland? And why are we discriminating in favour of one group of print-disabled learners and not supporting dyslexia or physical disability? I think that's something that we might like to consider. But I know from personal experience that if you can provide the Books for All database we set up in 2010, and if you can, in my job, I go into schools and I need to sell this to staff. So if I can provide something which actually makes life easier for staff as well as students, I will more likely be successful. And one of the things that goes down really well is if you can go in and say, look, here you go. This is a way that this learner can be included and they can do the same as everybody else, and they're going to be doing it on the device. And the way to do that is to have the same learning resources, but on the device itself. So I think it's crucial, and I would encourage you to explore that. Our second example, Malcolm. Now, Hamish is an example of someone that's using mainstream technology. Malcolm is somebody who's requiring more specialist support. He drives a powered wheelchair. He's now in secondary school at mainstream, and his technology is a laptop, which he accesses using a joystick, because he can't work the keyboard. When he clicks with the mouse, he uses head switches. In order to access and type, he uses an on-screen keyboard. And also, because he's got a communication difficulty, then he uses a communication aid. And in his case, this is an example of multiple means of representation, expression, and engagement. Now, I've got time to show a 1-minute video. I'll warn you, this is very quick, so wake up and pay attention.
Malcolm has significant physical challenges. All his books need to be provided in an accessible format. That format should aim to improve performance in independent reading and writing, which is affected by poor motor control resulting from cerebral palsy. He is included in a mainstream classroom and follows a standard mainstream curriculum. Technology available is basic. He will need assistive technology in order to benefit from any accessible materials. Assistive technology support includes Windows on-screen keyboard and a specialised joystick. Click and type was used to create a specialised number grid to reduce keystrokes. These help raise performance to a level nearer to his competence. For example, doing maths requires him to open the book, go to the correct page, navigate to a question, read it, write a number answer, and go to the next page. Maths books are published in Adobe PDF format. The digital version is our starting point. For each question, answer boxes, form fields are added, tab keys set to allow quick navigation, and a number of parameters set. Improving the environment, combined assistive technology, and a format accessible to him allows him to demonstrate his true competence. Attainment improved quickly. Other pupils with a visual impairment and with autistic spectrum disorder were also helped by this format. Work continues to add many more books to make them available through a secure portal to all teachers in Scotland. Changes to the law and policy have effected significant improvement.
Now, what I like about this and the job I've got is we developed this method of support for Malcolm and tried it out, and it worked so well that we then just adapted the entire Scottish primary maths scheme and then made them available in the Books for All database. And it's turned out that actually this has been terribly helpful for learners who not only have got physical difficulties but also have got visual impairment or dyslexia or are possibly on the spectrum and just prefer a much less cluttered offering. The other thing that worked really well with Malcolm was that we introduced him to OneNote as a digital jotter, and this is a really practical thing. If you've not seen it before and you've got learners that use technology, take a look at OneNote. Just think of it as a digital jotter, because prior to this, what would happen is that Malcolm would, anytime he did any bits of work, he would generate a new document. And so, within weeks, he had thousands, hundreds of bits of files kicking around, and it became completely unmanageable. OneNote is really simple, and for learners who have organisation difficulties or just simply rely on a device as their main means of writing and recording, that you really do want to take a look at OneNote. Now, my last area that I'm going to talk about is assessment. And so one of the projects I've been involved with for some years is digital examination papers. So in Scotland, we have the same sort of system as in most of Europe, which is we have a traditional paper examination sat at the end of your school career. And last year, there were 6,057 examinations sat by 136,000 candidates. Now, in the examination, we have assessment arrangements which are designed to allow learners that might have a difficulty with the paper format to demonstrate their knowledge and skills, but without compromising the integrity of the assessment. And in 2008, after some development work, SQA started providing or offering digital question papers. Now, this is really simple technology. It's just a PDF of the examination. You can change the colours, you can make it bigger, you can zoom in, you can access the paper if you've got a physical difficulty, you can use text-to-speech to read the questions, and it's got answer boxes where you can tick or just type your answers in, or dictate using speech recognition. Since they were introduced, we've seen a steady increase in the use of technology, and a decrease in the use of human support in the form of readers and scribes. One of the reasons that I was quite keen to see this happen was because I kind of think we can do better, than finishing our school career by having someone read our exam to us and write down our responses. I think we can do better than that. And in 2005 to 7, when we were looking at this, that was the most common method of support. And I'm thinking, what does this do to prepare our successful learners and our confident individuals and our effective contributors and our responsible citizens? I think we can do better. Now, what we've found is that, sadly, assessment does seem to have some sort of impact on the curriculum. And so I've spent my working life trying to get this stuff working in schools. If you go along to a school and you say to them, see, here's a way where you can have fewer human beings, your learners can be more independent, and it's just using this technology that you've already got in school, and it will cost you less, then you get a good response. And I've seen an impact on teaching and learning across the school as a result, because in order to organize your digital exam papers, you've got to have the technology, and then you've got to do it for the prelims or the mock exams, and then before you know where you are, the technology is being used across the whole school. So that's an unfortunate reality, but it is a useful mechanism, is to think about assessments and then try and encourage them to be available using assistive technology. Now, one of the things that we found in the early days was that the voice we were using at the time was, Microsoft Mary or Sam or whoever it was, and they were a bit American and not too culturally appropriate. So we got some money to license some high-quality Scottish voices, and so we had Heather first, and then we got Stuart, who you heard earlier on, and then more recently we've got the world's first Scottish Gaelic computer voice. Mm-hmm. So just for a laugh, I thought we'd finish off with seeing what Katie makes of reading some Irish. Oh, and before we hear that, I'll just make another comment. I calculate that we've saved more than £2 million by providing this technology free of charge for all Scottish schools. But that's not the motivation, despite the Scots' reputation for thrift. The reason for doing this is back to universal design and what Dave was talking about making these tools available for everyone. Avoiding stigma. That's the reason for doing it. There is no way that every school in Scotland would buy Read and Write or Clicker. They don't have the money. By making it available for free, it's universal, we reduce the stigma, and now, as Dave was saying, learners are free to explore these tools. This is no longer specialised. It's available on your mobile phones, every single platform, and so that's the reason for doing it. It's not to save money. So here we go. Can Katie speak Irish Gaelic?
Úsáhar an tír me gweltacht chunt na cantar sin inéiring in a full no in an biag go Gaelic gurt in lelike mar frief henga wavere can guch is mojen fopul. Tá na cantar geltachta saie gotu I realtish agus tá sé ante realta si ntia chéile gov full gale biachta struchtúr agus menuer lichun coe vel na popol seo a chohu. Tá tábhach tar na biachta ag baint le gump ag pobl an ina wawra I lelike margra hengala húlagus tá sé mar bhuna chloch má tamj le socha I gaangacha bhí hacin yanéri.
I don't know, what do you think? Any good? So I tested it with Liam, or sent that video to Liam, and he shared it with somebody that can speak Irish Gaelic. And I think the response was, it's not too far out. Although it apparently depends on which part of Ireland you come from. However, Katie's there. You can, if you wish, buy her from Sarah Proc, which is the company in Scotland. But I suppose, I don't know, if I was in the Department of Education in Ireland, I might be phoning up Sarah Proc and seeing if I can do a deal, possibly, perhaps, maybe. So anyway, so in our service, we, as I say, we work with individuals, but also we deliberately try and provide affordable, well, preferably free, universal assistive technologies for everyone in Scotland. And there's lots of reasons for that. Part of it is to save money, but the main reason is to make this kind of technology available universally. And clearly, if you're going to charge, £2,000 for a site license for some sort of so-called assistive technology, that's a clear barrier to the stuff being taken up. And so that's the real reason for trying to do it. So really, well, all learners benefit from inclusive digital learning within the UDL framework, but there are some individuals for whom that's not enough, and we need to do something a bit more individual in order to help them benefit from education. So thank you. I hope this talk was useful to you, and if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.